Hello everyone, welcome to the RealTalk Podcast. We've all heard success stories of the year. Yes, they're a great source of learning. However, failure and setback stories are the best sources of learning. This is what the RealTalk Podcast is all about. Today we have Atishay, an incoming analyst at Bain. Hi Atishay, let's begin by getting to know you a little better.
Hi everyone, I'm Atishay and I'm currently a final year student at DTU and I'm interested in pursuing the field of management consulting as my career. And talking a bit about my hobbies, I like to play tennis. I've also developed a newfound interest for baking in the lockdown, and I also like to play the keyboard synthesizer in my free time. Over to you, Anish.
Great, Atishay. So let's dive right into it, right? So could you give our audience a brief about what specific failure or setback would you be talking about today?
Sure. So the specific setback that I plan to talk about today in the podcast is, I think, a very major setback that a lot of our audience might have gone through at one point of their life, is my transition and my journey from being an introvert to being an extrovert. And what is unique about this journey is that I had this transition when I was in a boarding school, when I was all alone. I didn't have anyone to support me. I didn't have anyone to help me out. And I think that transition, those 2 to 3 years of hardships of my life, really helped me in transitioning to the person that I am today, where I'm confident, where I feel I have good communication skills, I have good interpersonal skills. And I think there are lots of learnings that all of you can take from this transition that might help you somewhere in your life.
Great. So I think let's start off by a very simple question. So whenever we go through some kind of hardship and we decide to change, it is usually because that hardship has actually affected our life to a certain extent. It's crossed that threshold. So in your case, how exactly did the setback or the failure affect your life?
Right. So, talking about that threshold, as I mentioned, I was in a boarding school. And for those of you who are not aware, boarding school is not really one of the best environments to be at, especially, when I was back in my fifth or sixth grade, because, it was not a very safe space. It was not a very welcoming space. And, I felt that, we couldn't really be ourselves, especially being at such a young age. And one major issue that we used to face back in our years was the issue of bullying. So, at our boarding school, bullying was something that was very prevalent. And, our seniors used to bully us a lot, and that was something which kind of affected me a lot, because being an introvert, being a closed person, being someone who had a very limited friend circle, who was very underconfident, and who was not confident talking to new people, going to new places, going to new surroundings. I felt that bullying affected me much more, and it affected me for the worse compared to those of my friends who were strong enough to face that and move through it. So I feel that was one of the major trigger points which kind of made me make a transition, and make a strong statement to myself that no, this had to be stopped, and I had to transition from being an introvert to being an extrovert, and to stand up against all that wrong that was being done to us.
Okay, great. So again, when we decide to change, there are always different trigger points that we have in our life. So in your case, what were those trigger points that actually told you that, you know what, this is it, I'm not going to take it beyond this and I'm going to change? So you gave like a broad aspect of for how it affected your life, but if it'll be great if you could give like an example or two of what those exact trigger points were in your life.
Right. So, these trigger points happened somewhere around, my sixth grade, when I was transitioning from junior school to middle school. So in junior school, that was during my fourth and fifth grade, which were the first 2 years of my boarding school. We used to be kept in a separate, safe, inclusive environment, where we were cut off from the, other classes and, the other students in the boarding school. So that was somewhere, where we were safe, and, we were cut off from the external world. We were in a protective shell, wherein we didn't really face all the atrocities and all the hardships outside. But the moment I transitioned from my fifth grade to my sixth grade, and of course being in a boarding school, all of us used to stay in hostels. And since it was middle school, so it was a shared hostel where we had students from sixth grade, from seventh grade, from eighth grade. That was the first time, wherein we had that protective covering being opened for us, that bubble being opened for us, wherein we had to where we had that first instance, where we had faced bullying, where we actually, where we actually heard about, students being bullied, but we never actually faced that. And that was something that happened to me for the first time. So this was something that happened within the first 15 days when I moved to my sixth grade. It was past our lights out time. We had a lights out time of 11 p.m. And post lights out time, when all of our attendants and all of our resident wardens had gone back to their rooms, to their residences, our seniors, used to come to our rooms. They used to turn on the lights, and they used to, ask us to do, ask us to do push-ups, ask us to do pull-ups, ask us to become a murga, as it is called in Indian language. They used to kick us in the ass, and they used to make us do all sorts of weird things, which you might have heard about, basically all sorts of things which you might have heard, which come under the broad umbrella of bullying. And that was the first trigger point that I had, that this is something wrong. This is something that has been happening, but this shouldn't be happening anymore. And we should be going through all of this. That was the first trigger point where I felt, that this was wrong. And I, being an introvert, it was actually very difficult for me to, actually go through that phase, actually digest everything that was happening to me. And having no one to, open up to, having no one to talk to about it was another major issue, which, was a trigger point. The second trigger point was, a few days after this, when, there was another incident of bullying, wherein apparently one of the faculty members also, passed that, that spot, that ground where we were being bullied by a couple of our seniors. And the faculty members, the administrative staff completely turned a blind eye to what was happening. And earlier we were a bit scared, because that was the first incident. So we were a bit scared to open up to our faculty members. We were scared that, if we could complain against our seniors, they would, go even more harsh on us, and they would retaliate. So we didn't, open up to our faculty members, and we thought that maybe it was a one-time thing. But when that happened for the second time, and a faculty member, actually passed by these feet, that was something, which kind of hit me. And the second trigger point that, we are completely alone in this, and not even the faculty or not even the administration is going to help us. So I think that was something which kind of, motivated me to, actually stand up to what was happening, stand up as a community, make sure that my friends also stood up to what was happening, and we actually voiced their opinion. And I actually make that transition from being an introvert, from being a closed person, to actually being an extrovert who voices his opinion out.
Great. So what were those steps that you took to kind of overcome this entire challenge?
Right. So, talking about my journey of transition, since my journey was not just about bullying, but also about, transforming myself from being an introvert to being an extrovert. The first thing that I did was, I had a very limited circle of friends that I was, restricted to. The first thing that I did was, I tried to talk to random people. I tried to talk to new people, even though it was really awkward for me. It was really awkward for me, coming from, close bubble and talking to new people. I took it as a challenge and I decided to overcome it. So, I tried to talk to new people. I tried to talk to different people. I even tried to interact with my juniors and with my seniors, that, I could have a more wholesome experience. I could have a more, a more wide experience wherein I could, talk to a lot of people. So that was the first step that I took, trying to break that bubble for me and trying to come out of that bubble and trying to talk to new people. The second major thing that I did was, since I also had a lot of stage pride, I was scared to go on a stage, to go on a public platform, and to talk to, a large audience in particular. So, what I did was, being in a boarding school, I had a lot of opportunities where we had our morning assemblies, we had a lot of extempore competitions, a lot of debate competitions, jam sessions, wherein, I could go forward, and, I could talk on any random topic in front of a large audience. So I started registering and I started putting my names up for those competitions. And initially, even my teachers were not that supportive for me, because even they knew that I was an introvert and I was not really the best public speaker. I used to stammer, I was not very good with communication skills, and I used to shiver. I used to be scared when I used to go in front of a large audience, even when I had to, deliver a presentation in front of a small class of 20-25. I was scared in doing that. So even my teachers were not really supportive. But when they saw that I was constantly putting up my name, I used to go and talk to my teachers. I used to ask them to, help me out and provide me a platform. So even my teachers started supporting me. And that was the second thing that happened, wherein, I started pushing myself out to public platforms, out to these competitions, wherein, I could go out and, I could talk out on any random topic in front of a large audience. And the third major step that I took was, it took a lot of patience. It took a lot of hard work, and it took a lot of time. So this transition for me was not a quick transition. It took me about 1.5 to 2 years to actually transition from being that underconfident introvert person to being an extrovert, to being a confident person who could actually voice out my opinions and also voice out the opinions of what was happening with others, with my friends. So I think this journey required a lot of patience. there were moments when I felt that, it was not going to work out. I should probably just quit, or, probably just, talk to my parents about it, just quit, quit boarding school altogether and, go back to a safe environment in my home. But, I decided to pull through it. I decided that, even though if I quit out of boarding school and, I somehow, avoid bullying, being an introvert would be something that would, kind of haunt me for the rest of my life. So I think patience, the willpower, the dedication to kind of pull through that entire transition phase was one very important aspect to this entire journey that I have. Over to
Great.
you.
I think I'd like to tell the audience another thing. So, like Atishay, what basically what Atishay did is like he took up challenges. He did stuff that didn't he didn't want to, but he knew that it was very important for him. And for a lot of these things, there's actually this rule called the 5 second rule, wherein what you do is you do a countdown like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then just take that decision or take that step. So for example, if you're registering for a competition and you don't want to, but you know it's important for you, you just like give that countdown in your head and then just register for it. So that's something that's a great way to kind of deal with such things. But coming back to you, Atishay, through this entire process, what was the hardest part about this entire challenge?
Right. So, I feel the hardest part of this challenge was something that, not only I as an individual was going through, but that was something that a lot of my friends were also going through, was, the lack of support. As I mentioned, the administration and the faculty members were not really supportive of, what was happening and didn't really help us out. And, being in a boarding school where, we didn't really meet our parents a lot, we used to go back to our homes once in 6 months, we used to meet our parents once in 3 to 4 months. And, we were not even allowed to have electronic devices with us. So we were just allowed to make a telephonic call to our parents once in a week or once in 10 days. So we really didn't have anyone to support us. Our friends used to help us out, used to support us. But at the end of the day, even they were going through a similar situation. And even they were sixth graders or seventh graders who didn't have a lot of experience on how to deal with these situations. And, not having an elderly person, not having, a family member who could, calm you out, not having a cousin who could, provide you that safe space where you could open up to them. That was one of the major, I think, major hurdles that I had, not having my family around, not having someone to support me, which I feel if it would have been the case with me, would have helped me in a very swift and would have helped me in a very easy transition and, would have allowed me to make this transition much faster and, voice out my opinions much harder against what was happening.
Got it. So I think another important thing to actually understand is that you made that change in a span of, let's say, 2 years. What you did after that change is very, very important. So, when you were being bullied or when you were being kind of not done right with, how did it change after you became an extrovert? Did you take some action against it, or like what exactly did you do?
Right. So by the moment, I was confident enough, that, now I was ready to face on all the challenges and now I was ready to voice out my opinion. That was a bit too late for me because, by that time, my parents decided to pull me out of boarding school. And I felt that I just had 7 to 8 months on my hand, wherein I could actually, help out my peers and actually stand up to what was happening. So, the first immediate goal that I had was, if I had gone through that hardship, if I had gone through that suffering and I had changed, I also had to help my friends through it. So, the first thing that I did was, by the time, the 2 years of transition had happened for me, I had happened to interact with a lot of people. So I had a good friend circle. And since I was very active in these public platforms, I used to participate in a lot of competitions. A lot of my batch also knew me by virtue of these competitions. So what I did was, I tried to get everyone together and I tried to, explain the whole situation to them. And I tried to, get that community spirit high, wherein I tried not just to help myself, but also help my friends to rise up to the issues that we were facing and take it up to the higher authorities and, talk it out with our seniors. So that was the first thing that I did. The second thing that I did was, by the time, I was confident, I also happened to, have a few good friends with my seniors, So I decided to talk it out first on an individual level with my seniors. So we have this group of 10, 15 friends who were close friends and who decided to actually stand up to this issue. So we all decided to, approach 2 to 3 seniors that we were close with, that we were comfortable talking to, and that we felt, if we opened to them, that wouldn't actually, have a bad impact on us or on our batch or on our friends in general. So, we decided to take that issue up with our seniors. We decided to talk to them, we, tried to explain it to them that, even though if they had been in a similar situation as us back when, they were in their seventh grade and in their eighth grade. So they were, the best person who could understand what we were going through. And if, something had been inflicted upon them, it was their duty to kind of make sure that that didn't pass on to the future generations. And that was something that was taught then and there. And they passed on that message to their juniors as well, that, if something wrong has been done with you, you need to stand up to it and you need to make sure that you don't pass on that wrong to the future generation. So we tried to take that issue up with our seniors. We tried to talk it out with our seniors, and we tried to harness that weakest link that we had, and then make sure that they helped out, in voicing this opinion to the larger masses in general. And the third step that we took was, take this issue up with our authorities. That up till this point, all of us were scared of, talking to our authorities. We decided to give it a shot. We decided to talk to our teachers. We decided to talk to the administrative staff. And gradually, when we decided to go in groups and not go as individuals, because we were scared if we would go as individuals, they would kind of crush down on our voices, and that issue would never come up to the masses. So we decided to go forward as groups. We decided to take this up with the principal, with the dean. And there was this one point of time where we were even successful in setting up a meeting with our principal and talking this out with our principal. And even our principal was really kind of amazed that why something of this sort had never been brought into his eyes. So, and that was one great achievement that we felt that we had made as a group, and a huge footprint that we had left for the future generations. Wherein the principal addressed this issue in a very harsh manner, and they even took out notices. They addressed this in their assemblies, and they made it a point that what was happening was wrong and that had to stop. So I think this was the best that I could do in my capabilities in that short span of time that I had in my boarding school.
Got it. I think that's a great step. I've seen a lot of people who've been through something. They obviously deal with it. They get over with it, but then they don't really do anything to try to ensure that other people do not go through that. So the step that you took to try and ensure that your juniors did not go through the same thing is a very courageous step, because I know for a fact not a lot of people would be able to do that. So that's great. Now, before we end the podcast, I'd like you to give like one tip to the audience that can actually help them progress in their life. So if there's one, that learning, one tip that you can actually take away from everything, like from this entire experience, what would that be?
I think if I would just have to give one tip, that one tip would be the entire basis of my transformation and of my journey. And I think this tip is something that is not just relevant to my transformation and my setback, but can help, a lot of you who might be going through other situations. Is that, you need to face on your fears. You need to face your hardships. You need to face your failures bang on. The thing that you're most scared of, you need to actually go ahead and start doing it. So let us say, someone, is scared of, actually, swimming. That's a very common, hardship that a lot of us face through in our initial years. So I would just recommend, instead of being scared and instead of doing nothing about it and just complaining about it, you should actually go ahead, just join a swimming class, join a swimming camp and go ahead and jump into the pool. So I think that is something that I would recommend all of you to do. What I did particular to my case was, since I was scared of, talking to new people, I was scared of going to public stages and, speaking in front of a large audience. I decided to address the issue hard on, and instead of complaining about it, I decided to talk to new people. I decided to talk to my teachers. I decided to grab all the opportunities that came my way. So I think that is one very important learning that I have from my transition that I think I would like to pass on to all the viewers that would help you in your transitions and you in facing your hardships and your failures.
Got it. That's great. I mean, that's actually a great advice, because it's not very easy to do. It's not some kind of magic, or it's not something that something that you tell someone and then they'll go like, oh, you know what, this is a great idea. I think we all of us know that. But the fact that this tip or this learning is so important is because this is the most sustainable way to deal with your failures or to deal with your hardships. Just go ahead and face them, because a lot of people they keep running away from their problems, because they just don't. They're okay with being sad or with feeling bad, rather than actually trying to take up a challenge and actually face that issue. But yeah, I think that's a great tip. Thank you, Atishay, for coming to the Real Talk podcast. I hope you had a great time interacting with me, and I'm sure the audience has a lot to take away from the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Ansh. And I really hope my transition and my journey would help a lot of the viewers of this podcast in facing their hardships and facing their failures. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone who stayed till the end and heard the podcast. I hope you learned something today that could help you in the present or the future. If you'd like to show up on our podcast, fill in the short form in the description below. Looking for a safe place to talk about your feelings, struggles, etc. one on one with people without any fear of judgment through likes, followers, etc. Make sure to try out the Real Talk app. You can find the website link in the description below. Thank you again. See you on the next one.